Welcome everybody to Q Plus EDU. We're super grateful you are here with us tonight. My name is Frederick. My pronouns are they, them. I am Out Youth Texas GSA Network Coordinator, and this session is safety planning around being kicked out. I will be presenting along with another panelist, Ray, who won't be on video, but we have a slideshow, so that's what you'll see most of the time. It will be recorded, but we're the only ones being recorded, so our participants don't have to worry about that. And I'm going to turn it over to E, who is the founder of Q Plus EDU.
Hi, I'm E. I use they, them pronouns. As Frederick said, I'm the founder of Q Plus EDU. I'll just be here moderating the Q&A. So throughout this presentation, I will be dropping all of the resources and links that are mentioned into the chat. But if any of you have questions as we continue to do this presentation, please feel free to ask them using the Q&A function. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ray.
Oh, hey, everybody. I'm Ray. I was actually born in Texas, but we moved around a lot as a kid. I left home at 17, came out to California, spent some time houseless off and on, both in Iowa and in California, and then also just kind of traveling around, hitchhiking, train hopping, stuff like that. Since then, I've basically settled out here. I have been a sex worker. I have worked at a collectively run bakery. I have done all kinds of stuff. And now I work in tech and animation. And so it's been kind of a trajectory. I think, and the picture that you see on the screen is my pup Tiana. And I think that's it. Frederick, do you want to start with the slides?
Yes, I am. Let's see. There we go. Can y'all see the slides? Struggling just a little bit with the technology.
I can see them.
Okay, fantastic. So thank you again so much for being here with us. So my background, I'm originally from California. I've been in Austin, Texas for about 8-9 years at this point. 7 of those years I spent working in domestic violence crisis intervention. So I have a lot of experience with safety planning in particularly dangerous situations. And I have been with Out Youth as the Texas GSA Network Coordinator since December of 2018. And so this presentation is kind of a combination of those two things. And so we have stuff prepared, and Ray and I will go back and forth throughout the presentation. But if you have questions, please do feel free to use the Q&A function. So first of all, I think a lot of people who are watching this live or watching the video afterwards understand how much of a problem homelessness is amongst LGBTQ youth. This image here is from True Colors United, and it's estimated that up to 40% of the youth LGBTQ plus population in the US is homeless. And 26% of LGBTQ plus young people said that their families made them leave when they came out. So this graphic shows just how often that being kicked out and running away from home are deciding factors that lead to queer youth being unhoused. So whether you are worried that you might be outed to unsupportive family, which is actually the conversation that I had with a young person that spurred wanting to create this webinar, was talking to someone who said, what do I do if I'm afraid that I'm going to be outed, and if that happens, my parents are going to kick me out? Or if you are worried about a friend who's already experiencing homelessness, or if you have already left home after coming out went badly, this presentation is for all of y'all. And so Ray, if you want to talk a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, so came from an abusive home. So what I personally did was, and was lucky to be able to do, was able to compress my high school into 3 years so that I could actually graduate. And so that was like my time that I knew I was able to get out. So, you know, like basically literally like finished school and left. Um, you know, when I was traveling and squatting, I knew, yeah, a ton of queer kids, you know, some of whom had families that had forced them into like anti-gay, like conversion therapy that they had, you know, managed to get away from. You know, many others who had abuse at home and, you know, left because of that. Um, you know, and actually most of them probably weren't actually kicked out, but, you know, kind of made the decision to leave on their own before that could happen. Which is frankly like a little bit easier, you know, both because you have your own agency in doing that, and then also because, you know, you can make sure that you have all of your stuff together before you go.
Right, exactly. And that's kind of that's our goal with this conversation around safety planning is if you have these concerns or if you're thinking about leaving home, we want to help you be as prepared as possible for how to keep yourself safe and have the things that you need if and when that happens. Um, so this, you know, next slide here, Pack a Go Bag, is a direct link to my work with domestic violence. So this is something that we tell survivors of, you know, violence in the home too. You want to have a bag packed, ready to go in case, you know, that moment comes where you just have to get out. I do want to acknowledge that the idea of packing a go bag comes from a huge place of privilege. And we know that a lot of people, maybe even most people, aren't going to have the luxury of preparing these kinds of things. But if you have the time, if you have the means, it can be really helpful to have all of these things ready to go ahead of time. So prescriptions is always number one on my list. If you're taking medications, it's really important for your physical well-being that you continue to take those medications as you and your healthcare providers have talked about. I've had questions from young people, you know, if birth control is the medication that I'm taking, you know, is it crucial that I take that with me? And I'm not a medical provider, but I have worked in an abortion provider for a number of years and a gynecologist's office. And I would say, you know, if there's a Planned Parenthood in your town, then it's not really as big a deal. It's not too difficult to get birth control. But again, it's Texas, so if you need parental consent to get birth control, if there's not a Title X clinic near you, those are things to consider too. The medications that I would say are more important to make sure that you have enough of that you take with you are things that you are under strict instructions to not stop without talking with your doctor first, like antidepressants. So just, you know, prescriptions, you know, you want to have glasses and contacts if you need those things, a night guard, just any of the things that you need for your, you know, physical health or mental health. Identification is a big, important, tricky, messy, sometimes awful thing, especially for trans, non-binary, genderqueer folks. But if you have any form of identification, you want to take it with you, even if it doesn't match your gender. If you have originals, that's better. If you can only take copies with you, that's okay too. But having a paper copy is a good idea, even if you have this kind of stuff on a flash drive. But things like your driver's license, your social security card, your birth certificate, your passport, any of those things that can be used to prove that you are who you say you are can be helpful. And if you have one of those things, they can help you get a lot of the other things. So identification is an important thing to grab if you can. Obviously, just to stay connected, chargers for your phone, laptop, tablet, whatever kind of electronics you might be able to bring with you. For clothing, lots of socks and undies. Don't forget your face masks. Hygiene items,
Close. I'm just gonna
Yeah, absolutely.
say like, yeah, so if you do spend time houseless, and like don't have access to, a shower or whatever, some of the most important things to be able to change and have clean and dry are socks. Boot rot sucks. Like boot rot is, if you like have your feet in shoes, especially like sweaty socks, like all the time, like your feet, they don't like it. So that is why, socks are some of the most like commonly requested items when people are houseless. They're great. Also, if you menstruate, you can use a sock for that too, if in a pinch. So,
yeah, lots of socks.
Yeah.
Yeah, hygiene items, just like stuff that you would want to have to keep you comfortable and less itchy. Phone numbers. I know that this is kind of a strange concept for a lot of folks who like never actually call anyone, but having written down phone numbers for individual humans who you trust, you can think of them as your emergency contacts, whether that's your best friend, whether that's a family member who lives on the other side of the world, anybody who you trust, and then also the information for shelters and your local LGBTQ plus orgs. That's information that can be really useful for you when you need someone to talk to. And then, just stuff that's going to make you a little bit more comfortable out and about. So snacks and bottled water, a comfort item if it's like small enough to travel with you, photos, sentimental stuff, cash. And so obviously like these things are luxuries to be bringing with you, but as painful as it might be, if you pack your go bag thinking that you're never going to return home, you're more likely to bring the things with you that you won't, you're less likely to leave things behind that would be really heart-wrenching for you if you realized later that you didn't have those.
Also for this stuff, so, on the one hand, if there's, a fear that people might, try to block you from leaving, then, it could be bad if they found out that you had a go bag. On the other hand, if you're already carrying a backpack or bag with you for school stuff on the regular, then just having a lot of these things in there already just sort of makes sense for wherever you're going. And so kind of thinking about like what you can have discreetly, if that's important, is real good. Also, this is the same stuff like I live in California now, and in case of earthquake, this is also the stuff that I would want to have with me. So, it's kind of super multi-purpose, this.
Yeah, and if someone catches you putting together a go bag and you need a quick excuse, you can always say, it's a tornado kit, it's a hurricane kit, it's, we were talking about emergency preparedness at school, and this is, one of the things that everybody should have, because it's true, everybody should have it. But the idea with the go bag is that no matter like when it is, like if you, have to go, you can grab this and go. And yeah, that's the idea of a go bag. And did I miss anything, Ray? Is there anything else that folks should have in there?
Yeah, this is all pretty good. I could not think of anything when I was anything additional when I was thinking earlier. Like actually, like basic first aid stuff. I mean, there's like a lot of other stuff that like if I was planning on like being houseless, there's things I would put in there. But so yeah, it also depends on like if you're like I am leaving and going to a shelter versus I'm leaving and going to my friend's house whose rad parents are going to let me stay with them, or yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are a couple of other things that I had in my notes here that like if you have these things and you can bring them with you, they can be useful. So things like health insurance or Medicare cards, if there's if in some way you're going to be able to keep your medical insurance even if you're not tied to your parents or guardians. And then if any like adoption, citizenship certificates, If you have banking information, like if you have your own bank account or credit cards, you want that information. And if you're taking a pet with you, you want to have your pet records if possible. So if you can have their adoption records and their vaccination records, those things are really helpful to prove that this pet belongs to you. And that's not always a luxury that we get when we're leaving. But it's a good idea to think about if you have the time to prepare.
For sure.
So as I'm sure you've gathered from the conversation that we've had so far, it's really important to have a plan A, B, C, D, if you are able to plan what you're going to be doing. So if you have any concerns that you might be kicked out if you came out to someone or if someone else outed you, just thinking about what your options are ahead of time can be helpful and comforting if that does happen. So, staying with other family members, or with, like Ray said, the, friends of your awesome, like friends whose parents are awesome, that's probably going to be the easiest option. And we know that not everybody has those options available. So the organizations listed here are pretty good options for finding a safe place to stay too. And then we've also, so this is Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth, El Paso, and then we've also got Houston and San Antonio in the next slide. And all of these links will be added to the chat for folks as well.
Also, kind of no matter where you are, like most large cities will have like a LGBTQ center. And just finding that place, they'll often be able to hook you up with resources, tell you like where is good to go. They might even have some more sort of like on the ground info about like what shelters are safer or nicer to be at.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's more other links as well for additional kinds of shelters and things too, later on in the slides. The other option is to, if you belong to queer spaces in online communities, especially if you if you belong to queer spaces in online communities and are asking for a place to stay, if you're offered a place to stay by someone who you have mutual friends with, especially, that's not something that I would encourage people to turn away. The number one thing is always trust your instincts. Trust your gut feeling. Like if it doesn't feel safe, absolutely don't go with it. But if if it's a friend of a friend, or you a bunch of people in common, having that online community, you might be able to find, somebody has a spare room open, and you can stay on their couch until you can find someplace else.
Yeah, I'm just gonna second the follow your instinct, and if someplace ever feels unsafe, it's you're not being ungrateful to leave or to refuse. There's lots of folks will get into sugar daddy or sugar mama situations. I'm not going to say anything against that, but it's also a weird power dynamic, and the consensuality is a little bit iffy. So think about how you feel about that sort of thing. And always being wary of anything that's weird. Like when I used to hitchhike, first thing you do if you open the door is check to see if there's still a door handle on the inside, because people would break them off, if they had bad intent, so that you wouldn't be able to open the door on your side from the inside. So just keeping an eye out for anything that feels out of place or wrong, and remembering that you're you don't owe people for offering you a place, unless you have negotiated that beforehand, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a really good tip. I think that's just a good thing to think about, like getting in the car with someone who you don't know super well, like even if you're not hitchhiking, and something I never would have like considered. So these are all local to Texas, and then there's also a bunch of national resources here. So I'm guessing that most people here are going to be familiar with the Trevor Project, but they operate a suicide prevention hotline and chat and text hotlines as well. They also have a networking space for folks under 25 called Trevor Space. And then National Safe Space operates in 40 states and provides information on local businesses, libraries, and other organizations that are safe for LGBTQ plus teens who need somewhere to go. If you're in immediate danger or crisis, you can text the word safe and your location to the number 44357, and you'll receive information on the safe place that's closest to you. So that's cool that they have that text option. The next one on there is the National Runaway Safe Line. Their conversations are confidential, and they can get you resources and help you make a plan to get safe. Sometimes that includes bus tickets to go to a safe, a family member. They have a phone number, it's 1-800-RUNAWAY, but there's also email and chat through their website. Let's see. And then we've got the It Gets Better Project, the Trans Lifeline, the LGBT National Help Center. And the LGBT National Help Center also has a youth talk line. So if you want someone to talk to about just general being a queer youth, they are a good place to talk. And then the National Center for Transgender Equality has extensive online resources about healthcare issues for trans folks and information on legal rights, especially regarding how you're treated in housing situations in homeless shelters. And then the next one on there, the National Coalition for the Homeless. You can contact them if you are already experiencing homelessness or if you are concerned that you might be in the near future. They can refer you to local resources, and they also have a searchable database to look for shelters and support organizations. And then the next one, 211 United Way, you can go to their website. This is 211 Texas. The national resource is just 211.org, or you can call 211. And they can connect you with resources in your local area, like housing, food banks, job resources, and stuff like that. And similarly, Aunt Bertha has a zip code search function that you can use to find nonprofits, faith-based organizations, and social services available in your local community. Are there any resources that were super helpful for you, Ray, when you were out on your own?
So I was really skeptical of getting involved with any sort of resource stuff. Like a lot of the things that were available, at the time, or at least were the most obvious and most out there, were like churches that, I was like leaving partly because of, my dad being a pastor and stuff. And so like just didn't want to be in churches at all. And, but also like places that would, like offer a meal and then lock the doors and, until you would like listen to a sermon and stuff. So there's just like, I had a lot of wariness, but I was also, this was also, at times like mostly pre-internet. Like I actually, was on a kind of early form of the internet where I was able to like connect with people, and that was like part of how I, both how I stayed connected with no phone, and also how I was able to like find people, in a town where I was. So we'll have so much more, both so many more resources and so much better ways to vet them now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but definitely.
Can you talk a little bit more about like the vetting process and how you would like to?
How I would like kind of sort out who, where was good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, part of it is like land in a town and meet the people who, are there, and they'll tell you, right? Like, there's a good, people talk about that stuff. They will tell you like which places, are great. Like Food Not Bombs is, almost always like a great option if you're hungry, if your town has one. In Portland, it's free hot soup. A lot of times if there's like a free health clinic, those are going to be good places to, like kind of go and find out, information. Again, see, I'm like already thinking about like what are the ways that you do it offline. If it was online, first of all, just like, knowing that like, doing some investigation, right? There's reviews of things and you can kind of find out and like dig and see, is this really like some conversion therapy place that's doing, as a front, or is this like real, or is this a place I've heard of before? Is it through one of these, is it referred to through Trans Lifeline or, something? Which, by the way, I want to call out, Trans Lifeline are so rad. They're the only, sort of hotline support line that I know of that explicitly will not call the cops unless you, if you don't want them to.
Right.
Yeah, they're really great. I know people who are involved with Trans Lifeline. It's a really, really good option.
It's all staffed by trans folks too,
Yep.
which is awesome. And they have recently started offering micro grants for trans folks who are in need of funds. So that's also an option if you're, you need some money to stay at a hotel.
Yeah, they're so great. So yeah, places, it like finding it, basically like what I do is I like find one or two places that I trust, and then, talk to people there to find out, what resources they would recommend and kind of like work that network outward.
Mm-hmm.
Is basically how I do my vetting process, I guess.
That makes sense. And so our last slide here, it's not finishing school, it's finishing school. I thought about that after I like put it all together. I was like, no, finishing school, that's what's important now. And I know I do jokingly, but it may not feel like your education is a priority. And obviously there's a lot of education and a lot of things you can learn not in school and on the streets as well. But if you still have access to the school that you were attending before, there's really like a lot of support that can be found there. Things like, food, counseling, case management, maybe, your local GSA, maybe you've got a great English teacher. So just with a like quick understanding, under the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act, if you live in any of the following situations, so if you are in a homeless shelter, if you're doubled up with other people, if you're living in a car, park, empty building, bus or train station, or at a motel or campground, you have the right to receive a free, appropriate public education, enroll in school immediately, even if you don't have the documents normally required for enrollment, enroll in school and attend classes while the school gathers the needed documents, enroll in the local school or continue attending your school of origin if you prefer, receive transportation to and from school if requested, and receive educational services comparable to those provided to other students. So
Texas? Is that a Texas thing or a national thing?
I think that the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act is national, but I wasn't able to find as much information on it as I would like. The next link on here for the Texas Education for Homeless Children and Youth, that has a lot of information that's specific to Texas. But yeah, I'm not sure if it's national or if it's Texas specific.
I actually just looked up.
It's national.
Yeah.
And then for Texas specifically, this resource, the Texas Education for Homeless Children and Youth, has a lot of information. It's more aimed at school districts and like for people who are in schools to know how to best serve homeless students. But then in bigger districts like Austin ISD, there's also a lot of community supports and organizations that can assist unhoused and unaccompanied students with case management, like LifeWorks or Communities in Schools. And the Project Help, I know, is specific to Austin ISD. but they can provide for academic necessities like calculators, class trip fees, other fees associated with schools, but also gift cards for toiletries and clothing when those are available. In Texas, regardless of the school district that you were previously enrolled in, the grades and courses that you previously took are factored into the new schedule when you're enrolling in a new school district. But all that to say, you have a right to continue school no matter where you're living. Whether, like, if you are homeless and sleeping, you know, in a park, you still have a right to go to school and to get your education. And having that connection to your community could be helpful for you in finding other resources and finding a more permanent place to sleep too.
Totally. And, you know, if like going to school isn't an option, you know, GED programs can be great.
Yeah.
You know, there's community colleges also, like they vary pretty widely from state to state, but in California, the community colleges are still really fantastic and really great at, you know, helping folks figure that out. They do have, you know, all kinds of continuation courses. They're sanctuary schools. I know the Oakland School District is a sanctuary district. You know, so they're going to be.
Can you explain for us Texans what that means?
Basically, it's specifically for undocumented students. For whatever reason you might be undocumented, just a sanctuary school, they're going to make sure you're taken care of. You, your parents are not going to be reported in any way. And they tend to have, you know, a lot of, assistance programs, you know, language programs, know your rights programs, all kinds of stuff. So the school district, you know, again, you know, this is a sort of investigate and find out what it's like where you are,
Right.
because it can vary really widely. You know, it might also, you know, and it can vary widely just from like, you know, nearby cities, one for the other. Like it's probably different, you know, in Dallas than it is in Austin, and it's definitely different in some smaller town than it is in either of those places. So, you know, that can be something that you want to think about. Like if you're coming from a small town and you know that you want to head into Austin, to have more access to resources and, you know, to potentially be somewhere, more progressive, where you're going to meet more queer folks, you know, kind of figuring out where to go beforehand and how you're going to get there, and, you know, what school options you might have is a really good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a wonderful plug for the Q Plus EDU session that we're doing on Friday with the ACLU, which is a Know Your Rights trivia. So we definitely hope folks will join us for that one too. Yeah, that's all I had. Ray, was there anything else that you wanted to add about any of the topics that we talked about, like prepping for leaving, resources?
Yeah, I think, you know, so like I said, I was really averse to accessing resources, partly, you know, because of trust issues and partly because of like, I'm just gonna make my way on my own, like bullheadedness. And I gotta say, like, there are probably ways that kept me safe, and there are probably ways that made my life harder than it needed to be. And so I think that, you know, were I able to give, you know, young me advice that young me would actually be willing to listen to, it would be like, you know, don't be afraid to, you know, access resources, accept help, you know, be wise, be wary about, you know, who you're accepting help and what are the, you know, explicit or implicit sort of trade-offs you're making there. And, you know, or like you said, you know, like people might try to tell you that you know, owe them when they like just said, hey, come crash on my couch, like, or whatever, like that's,
right, that's not consent.
yeah, that's not consent, exactly. But there are like lots of really great places like that are run by, you know, people who've been through it, you know, that are, you know, and that are, you know, like run by, you know, people who are, you know, like either recently through it or like me, you know, through it 20, 30 years ago. but people who will, understand and care and have ethics and all of that. And like, yeah, don't be afraid to access those things. It don't make your life harder than it needs to be. But also, like, I did get by without that stuff. Like, if you can land somewhere, and if you do have to just like leave immediately, and not get to plan all this stuff, like you can find a way. You'll figure it out. But just trust your people instincts, or understand that you don't have good people instincts, and build some ways to around that to help keep yourself safe. Find a buddy who does have those good people instincts. Do whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I did a meditation the other day that really I found super useful, and I would love to share with the whole world. But it was basically learning to um, understand your body's physical response to things. And so it was like finding your place of yes and your place of no in your body. Um, and it was on Insight Timer, and I can't remember the name of the teacher, but there are like things like that out there that can help you kind of tap into that intuition and build those muscles a little bit if that's not a skill that you have built up yet. One of the other sessions that I think might be useful and have some overlap here is on August 6th. We're doing a panel on harm reduction for LGBTQ plus youth. Awesome. And we will have panelists who specialize in self-injury, drug use harm reduction, and eating disorders, because we know that those are all pretty prevalent in the LGBTQ community. And, obviously there's a lot of overlap there for homeless folks too.
Actually, that's another, good point that I'd been thinking about, is kind of knowing your relationship to substances, and knowing, how to stay safe, while using, if you're choosing to use whatever it is you're choosing to use. If you are in, like spaces that you're not as comfortable in, kind of like thinking about how you can modulate, things to stay as safe as possible. While also taking care of yourself, because sometimes when you're in hard situations, self-medication is necessary. So.
Right, yeah, especially, like we said, like if you weren't able to bring those medications with you that normally help with some of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super real.
Yeah, so thinking about, how to mitigate and modulate your usage around that. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I was going to say I was having some tech issues on my end when you were introducing yourself. So I don't know if I missed it, but how old were you when you left home?
Oh, 17.
Okay. And can you tell us a little bit about like how you ended up like leaving homelessness?
Well, leaving was an off and on. So let's see. So I left. So I was in a small town in Iowa, and I knew folks in Iowa City, which is where University of Iowa is, right? So like I basically went there first. And it was summer, so that made things, easier. And I actually was able to sleep on somebody's roof that had fire escapes, so they knew me, so like they, and like let their neighbors know, so that people weren't like, who's this creeper? But I was also, like up and away, like I didn't have to be on the street. The roof actually was kind of like nicely padded. It was one of the better places I ever did stay. And then I had gotten into Berkeley, so got myself out here to like start school and start working, and had a housing arrangement there. But then got like injured at work and I basically couldn't afford to keep my housing. And like I couldn't keep working because of the injury, or I could, but I was just injuring myself more and more. So I decided it was better to just like stop working and stop renting and just go travel for a while. So I kind of did the hitchhiking and train hopping thing, and then was like feeling, like healed enough after a few months of that to come back and like find new work and find housing again. And then had a house fire due to my slumlord keeping fuel in the shed. Yeah. And so had some time there, and then it's so, yeah. So the fact that I got through all of this and I'm now past 45 is a little bit nuts. But then the next house that I was living in after that was arson. There was arson directed at my landlady. So then I was houseless again. And then I've been through some other stuff, like a real bad car crash and some things, and just around off and on. But also because I was a nerd when I was growing up, and had some tech savvy things, and am in the Bay Area, I kind of managed to get myself into tech industry stuff. And now, like I said, working in tech and animation, and it's pretty great.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it was a back and forth, housed and not housed for a while there, for all kinds of different reasons.
Yeah. And I think that's a good, just like, thing for everybody to keep in mind, whether this is something that they've personally experienced or not, is that it's, as much as we would pretend it is, like, nothing is linear, and there are all kinds of reasons for all kinds of different situations. And so I think, if people do find that they're, dealing with issues with housing, like, not to, like, be hard on themselves about it.
Definitely not. And also don't, panic that, like, that if you don't do the like high school to college to, job like thing, that you won't have, access to a career or even to like interesting work or whatever that is. Like, that's so completely untrue. There's so many points at which you can, change directions. But yeah, there's no, and yeah, there's no linear, there's no one way, there's no one trajectory, there's no preordained.
Yeah, absolutely. So unless we have questions that have come up in the Q&A, I think, Ray, I would like to round this out by asking you about self-care when you were unhoused.
So I don't think that was a word that existed then. But yeah, like, seriously, the sock thing is like not to be belittled, nor is it just basic hydration.
Yeah.
I think, oh, that's such a good question. Tried to think of like what things I did. I did a lot of keeping myself safe, but actual self-care, like, probably the biggest thing was really like, being able to find people, who I trusted, like, both just to talk to, but also to like watch my back.
Yeah.
So that like you could get a good night's sleep. You could find a safer place to, crash. You could find, the good shows to go to, like, whatever, like some of it was definitely like, so I also, was a cutter, and definitely had some like self-destructive stuff. I struggled with, suicidal ideation pretty much my entire life. It's usually pretty low key, sometimes less so. So like I was definitely doing a lot of self-destructive behaviors. So again, like, I think probably the self-care that I was doing was, or the things that I thought of as self-care were somewhat helpful, but also somewhat harmful.
For sure.
They were sort of the best I knew how to do at the time.
Absolutely.
yeah, and with the resources that I had and all of that. And I think that's, that's all anybody can do.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. I appreciate your vulnerability. I think, we, for people who get enough sleep regularly,
Mhm.
I think the impact of not being able to get a good night's sleep um, repeatedly is kind of lost, but I
It's
think it
huge.
is so detrimental to people's physical and emotional and mental well-being. And so I
Mhm.
think, yeah, like you said, like, knowing who you can talk to find a safe place where you can actually sleep through the night, like
Yep.
staying hydrated, like, knowing where you can find food, like, I think, yeah, all those things, you know, are definitely not luxuries. Like those are,
Nope. Definitely not. Like also, I was vegetarian and still am actually, and was often a challenge then. I feel like it's probably easier, at least in a lot of places now, but um, I will still remember one time when friends, got some money and went to the grocery store to get some stuff, and they were like so pleased with themselves that they had remembered to get me some vegetable soup and it had beef broth.
oh,
And like, they were like, but vegetables.
just because it has vegetables doesn't mean it's vegetarian.
Yes. Um, but at the same time, like they had gotten enough other stuff that we made like a really, really bad vegetarian dish. Like I don't even know if it was actually that good. I just know that we were hungry and it tasted amazing at the time. So,
Right.
there is like hunger's the best spice. Um,
Yeah.
it's very real too. So yeah, I mean, there's still, it's, I wouldn't want to do all that again, but also, there were some, very many and like intensely good things and intense like personal connections and stuff that I made during those times that, yeah, that you don't make when you're more settled.
Yeah.
Um,
Did you
and
have a pet when you were traveling?
I did not. I knew people who had dogs. Oh no, wait, I had a rat for a little while.
Nice.
It like lived in my hoodie.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah, a lot of folks who travel with a dog or a,
Yeah. I mean, it can be, yeah, dogs can be like a really good safety net, plus, trusted companion, source of touch, like
yeah,
source of good touch.
yeah,
It's actually like also a really big deal. Um, comforting touch is not a thing like almost anybody gets enough of, especially right now.
yeah.
Um, but,
No, I totally
like, yeah, I would say like I have a big thing about how like platonic touch is really like, in the United States, like it's underrated. We don't, do enough of that, hugging our friends, taking care of each other that way. So like having a dog can be a big deal for that too.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And if you are traveling with a dog, or if you're, on the street in your local community with a dog, a lot of the local animal shelters do offer help in the form of like food and vaccines and things
Yes.
like that. Like if you need pet care, um,
Yeah.
there are organizations that help with that too.
Yeah, for sure. The like every SPCA that I know of has some kind of like food pantry for dogs and cats, sometimes rabbits and stuff too. Um, in the Bay Area, we have this awesome group called Paw Fund that does. They're like a harm reduction model for pet care.
Oh, cool.
Um, yeah, and I just love them. They're like, we will never ask anybody's income because we don't need to know that. Like, we're not, gonna make you prove how poor you are. Um,
Yeah.
like, if you bring an animal to us and needs getting taken care of, we will help. They will help with like spay and neuter stuff, medications, food, all of it. They're great.
That's awesome.
I don't know of any other groups like, exactly like them nationally, but there's a lot of good rescue groups around. Yeah.
Yeah, I know in Austin, we have Emancipet, and I think they might also have branches in Houston, but they are a low-cost vet clinic. I don't think that they do food and things like that, but their like prices for spay and neutering and for vaccinations and like in the South we got to worry about heartworm, so like heartworm treatment, flea and tick treatment, stuff like that are really really reasonable. And if you can't pay, you can definitely like talk to them, and they will do everything they can to help you. Their customer service is phenomenal.
Yeah, one thing I will say, and actually this applies to both like human healthcare and dog stuff, is that a lot of the things that are available to poor folks and houseless folks have really restrictive hours.
Yeah.
Like you have to, like, one of the skills of, being houseless, or, just being real poor, is being able to like figure out and make it work. If you're like, well, I need to go to the doctor and I have to like start calling exactly at 6 o'clock and, then be able to get there for an appointment, at, 7:30 or whatever, if I'm like, early enough in line,
right,
or like whatever, it is. And like, yeah, like a lot of the dog, a lot of the rescue groups, they do, a clinic, but it's like once a month, and stuff like that. And, it's, and it's not their fault, right? It's
right.
like, like they're doing as much as they can with like really limited resources, often all volunteer, all that. Like Berkeley Free Clinic is like that, whatever. It's a great place, but it can just be really hard, getting getting healthcare especially, but kind of like lots of resources can take a lot of knowing what time it is and getting places like, an hour early or 2 hours early or whatever. And I don't even know what to say except that like just plan on that being a fact of life, and it sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's totally true. Any free clinic, even just Planned Parenthood, like you're gonna have to wait, and they, that's definitely, yeah, makes things challenging. But like Ray said, if you can be the first one there, if you can be the first in line, the first one to call, then it's likely to take you a lot less time. But one of the other things, and this is kind of similar to what Ray was saying about like if someone tells you like, hey, yeah, you can crash on my couch, like it's not okay for them to later come back and be like, oh, hey, you owe me for letting you crash on my couch. In a similar vein, just because you're accessing low cost or free services doesn't mean that you don't deserve to be treated with respect by all of the staff or all of the volunteers there.
Yes.
And if you have a bad encounter with someone, you absolutely have the right to take that up the chain and let someone know like, hey, like, yeah, everybody's having a bad day and it's not okay for you to talk to people like this.
Yep.
And that's a skill that a lot of people, I think especially people who at any point in their lives were socialized as women, don't have and haven't had to exercise. But it's it's really important that you, even if you don't do anything about it, that that like you don't deserve to be mistreated just because you're accessing free or reduced cost services.
Yeah. And like both because of the frustrating waiting and also because, again, you are in a situation where the power dynamic, can feel really, really out of balance, because you are, maybe accessing like free or low cost services. And also, maybe the people you're around are a lot older than you and a lot more financially well off. And, all of that stuff is like, having somebody who can go with you, like if you can wrangle that, also because like, I firmly believe that actually everybody should have somebody who can go with them to like all doctor's appointments, all whatever, both to like make sure that they're not doing anything, tricky, but also just to help you remember like all the questions you wanted to ask, or help you like think, because like I know I freeze up like in the moment, especially if it's like stuff about me, or like, I don't know what questions to ask. I don't know anything. Also, like, my pain tolerance is pretty high, and my partner has become like my pain translator. So like I'll be, I've also had some pretty severe injuries and stuff, and you know, people ask me like what my pain is like, and I'll be like, it's a 6, and they're like, that means they didn't sleep at all last night. Like, and like actually like giving the, like in terms that they'll understand about like exactly how, like where I'm at. It's hard for me to communicate. Anyway, the point being like, yeah, if you can have somebody to like go with you to help you, wrangle those things, there's just like a lot of benefit to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And for folks here in Texas, I will say if you need to access abortion care and you're unhoused, if you're in, so the different cities have different programs, but in Austin, the Bridge Collective is the local like access and support group for abortion access. And there's, the Cicada Collective in Dallas, and Cason Clinic Access Support Network in Houston, and the Frontera Fund in the Valley, and the West Fund in El Paso, and I'm forgetting somebody. And then for long distance travel, if you have to travel out of state to get an abortion because you're past the state's legal limit, Fund Texas Choice helps with that. But if you are under 18, I would contact Jane's Due Process. They are the organization that helps minors in Texas get judicial bypass if you can't get parental consent to have an abortion. And they can also help cover some of the costs. But a lot of the abortion clinics in Texas have funds set up specifically for pregnant folks who are unhoused, because abortion can be extremely expensive, especially in a state where even if you have health insurance, it is not legally allowed to cover the cost of an abortion. And there's a 24-hour waiting period, and you have to pay for the ultrasound. And there's a lot of barriers for folks who can get pregnant in Texas, but there's also a lot of help available. And you can always reach out to me if any of these things are coming up for you. And you can share my email address in the chat as well. I see all the notifications for all of the wonderful links that have been thrown out today.
I just added a couple. So speaking of that, so first of all, for abortion stuff, or really like any sort of reproductive health care in California, there's Access. Access provides practical support for abortions. That's like helping with train tickets, helping with hotels, and other times there was, volunteers that would host people, but yeah, like helping with gas money, helping with child care, meals, whatever, for people who have to travel from around the state. Because even though things are pretty good in California, there's still like not that many places, and the waiting periods are variable, and the procedures they're willing to do, also depending on people's, health. There's also, there's discrimination against fat folks because there's anesthesiologists who don't understand, who are not good enough at their job to actually be working and don't understand how to like dose people properly. And so there's like all kinds of reasons why people might need to travel even within California, right, even if they do happen to have a clinic that's closer. Anyway, so Access is great for that in California. Also, if you do get pregnant and do want to have the child, in San Francisco, we have the Homeless Prenatal Project. I'll put that link in the chat. And
I don't know if we have anything like that in Texas. No, I haven't seen anything. I do know, so Austin has, I think it's called Mothers, which I am not a big fan of, but it's the milk bank.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and they actually like take donations too. So.
Yeah, they're, diapers are really expensive. There's often like diaper banks that are available. Gosh, I think there's actually a national like diaper bank website that will like let you know where your local ones are.
Oh, cool. Yeah, and I think, I totally understand, Ray, what you were saying about like your reservations of like getting connected to resources, because so many of them can be so like shady and preachy. but I also think like if you can find a reputable case manager, they can be super helpful for getting things like WIC and food stamps
Mm-hmm.
and just getting all the stuff that you deserve, and,
Yeah.
because you deserve help. Like that's like all
Yeah.
of these things are human rights and should be universal. Like shelter, food, healthcare, clean water, like education, like all of these things should be readily available to everyone. And you deserve all of them. So if, there are barriers coming between you and any of those things, like they're,
Mm-hmm.
don't feel bad about getting the help.
Yeah. Like I actually think one of the things, I mean, like I don't think I was as good at being able to say like, oh, this isn't for me, and so I'm gonna walk away and find something else. Like
Mhm.
that was not a thing that I was great at when I was, younger, that I think is like a really awesome skill to have. But like also I just didn't, like um I mean, maybe this is things have changed, or maybe it's, that like I just didn't find the right people then. But like a lot of my friends that I used to squat with, that I've been houseless with, are now like social workers working with houseless folks,
Right.
right? Like doing outreach, like doing all that kind of stuff. And so, like if you do, reach out like for some resources and something feels sketchy and walk away, it's worth trying again. Like you will, like hopefully be able to find like the right person, maybe not the first try, but like there's some really awesome folks out there who, like I said, have been through it and will understand. Like if you're in the Portland area, my friend and her amazing little outreach dog Bodhi, uh, you know, like would be great resources. There's people I know in Boston. There's people I know, all over, who, like I said, yeah, like didn't just get into it because like, oh, they want to help the poor. Like they get into it because they're like, yeah, this is what I needed, and I needed better than that, and so I'm going to make sure that people get better,
Yeah.
treatment than they did. They're
Absolutely.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, and currently Out Youth is, because of COVID, we're running, it's called the QT Closet, and we can offer like gift cards for grocery stores, hygiene items, gender affirming items, bus passes, stuff like that. And you can make an appointment on the website to do curbside pickup, and it'll be ready to go for you. So um, yeah, there's a lot of resources and stuff out there. I know that we are past time, and we so appreciate y'all staying on with us. And I think I saw a question in the Q&A. Is that accurate?
Yes. So the question is, I am currently queer, but I have not only stubborn but Black homophobic parents that don't believe in LGBTQ. My dad's violent over just hearing the term, and my mother shows complete disrespect to it. Problem is, it's hard listening to them talk so poorly about the community, and I really want to come out, but I have nowhere to go. So would it be in my best interest to wait till after college to come out? I also just turned 15, so maybe I'm too young to know my identity. I just need guidance, honestly.
Thank you so much for coming here and sharing all of that with us. You are absolutely old enough to know your identity, and you are the only person who gets to say what it is. And if it changes in the future, that's totally okay too. Um, just because this is how you feel now doesn't mean that you can't feel other things or different things later. Um, I, your parents and your situation best. So if you don't feel like it would be safe for you to come out to your parents, I would strongly encourage you to trust those instincts and to not come out. I'm guessing that coming out once you're off at college is probably also not an option if your parents are going to be helping you pay for school. Um, it's up to you. If, it's your call to make, if being honest with them is more important to you than, staying in their home. And like we said, there's a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of different organizations. Depending on where you are in Texas, there are shelters that may still have places to go. COVID is making things really strange, so I don't know that there's a lot of shelter space right now, but that might be different once COVID clears up a little bit. But there is a lot of help available, and you absolutely deserve to be in a safe space with people who love you and respect you, not in spite of who you are, how you identify, but because of it. And there are those spaces that exist. Ray?
Yeah. So just to second, like, I totally knew I was queer at about 6 years old, um, and have been queer my whole life. And also, I'm past 40, and I still feel like my identity is evolving and changing as I get better words and more understanding of myself and all of that. So I don't think you're too young to know, but also, like Heather said, like Frederick said, it is, okay for things to evolve. That doesn't mean that you that you were mistaken, or you didn't know, or you were too young to know, like right now. And same, like, the question of when and how to come out is super, super personal. For me, it just, I was in, a small town where, like, I did not have, any real connections, and also was in an abusive situation. And so for me, like, the choice to, like, leave was, like, really, really easy. But I know lots of folks who, have really difficult relationships with their parents, but family is so important to them that they have, chosen to stay through it. And yeah, that's just really rough. There are a lot of groups that are, like, specific to Black folks and Black queer folks, and also places like the Oakland LGBTQ Center that, is Black run, but open to, everyone that might have, resources, ideas about how to, like, sort of introduce things gently and drop hints. But yeah, it's fraught because of, whether or not you want to maintain the relationship, if you can afford to, like, leave, or, afford to go to college without them, or whatever. I can't say what's in your best interest, because there's just a lot of, emotional and financial and safety things all tied up in that. And I wish I did have a nice answer to give you, or some, like, guidance that was going to be like one size fits all, and just don't have that. So I think that it's really a thing that it's also okay to be constantly reevaluating, either just because it's always on your mind, you're constantly thinking about it, or because you say, okay, right now I've decided to stay, and I'm going to check in with myself in 3 months, and then 3 months later, and then 3 months later, and keep making, the decision based on how you feel at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And here, if you're here in Texas, ALLGO, ALLGO, all one word, is the statewide LGBTQ people of color organization. If you're in Austin, we have Austin Black Pride. And I know that there are other, like, specifically Black queer organizations throughout the state and other places too, if you want to talk to other Black folks about their experiences. I'm white, and Ray, I think you are white.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's unfortunately not something that I can speak to, but there are a number of organizations in Texas that, you can talk to people who may have been through similar situations. And yeah. E, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, sort of. I just dropped my email in the chat if you want to reach out. I am not the most well-equipped person to provide resources necessarily, but I am a Black queer person. So if you just want to, talk things out, we can call, we can talk via email if, calling isn't an option for you. And then also, there are plenty of places that will just provide sort of support in the form of a sounding board if you want to talk to people about what their experiences were like coming out, what led to their making this decision to either come out at home or not. And so if you want to reach out to me or to Frederick, we can definitely help connect you with those folks if you just want more advice on your specific situation. But regardless of whatever your decision is, there are plenty of people who exist who will support you, who will help you find places to stay if you do end up getting kicked out or anything. So yeah, definitely, if you are able and if you feel comfortable, please reach out to one of us and we can help.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you are here in Texas, anywhere in Texas, I would encourage you to join Out Youth's drop-in. It's virtual Monday through Thursday every week in the evening, if that's a safe option for you. It's just a great space to share with other young folks who may or may not understand what you're going through, but will at least be welcoming and loving. And thank you so much for your question. I think that's, that's the kind of question that led to this presentation in the first place. And I think, we're doing this for you because we want you to be and feel safe, because you deserve to be and feel safe. So thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, like I said, we are past time, but gratefully so.
Yes.
Any final thoughts?
Just also having an adult mentor can really help. There's a couple people I know here who are, like the intergenerational queer relationships can be just really, really amazing. A couple people I know here who, one of whom calls her people her ducklings. All of her non-bio kids that she has, taken in over time and gotten, involved with their lives, whether it's like helping them through school stuff and going to PTA meetings and things like that. There's, people out there that are like that, even if it's not a organization, that if you kind of, they're around and might be lucky enough, like not everybody is, but to, find somebody like that.
Yeah, and this Thursday, actually, Q Plus EDU is having a panel discussion with LGBTQ plus elders. So if you have questions that you specifically want to ask elders, it's a great place for that too.
Yeah, at the I don't know about other places, but one of the things at the Trans March in San Francisco is earlier in the day they have a multi-generational just like breakfast where they have, like people of all ages are welcome to like come together and just like meet each other and chat, and it's pretty rad. It's one of the better events in the whole weekend, and that's saying a lot. So yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ray. I really, really appreciate your perspective and you joining us on this. We're super grateful. E, thank you so much for your fantastic moderation, and everyone who joined us. We're super grateful. We would love to have you join us for the other sessions that we have this week. There's a bunch of them. You can check out the calendar at qplusedu.org to find those. And yeah, E, did you have anything you wanted to say before we close out?
Yeah, I just dropped links in the chat for the upcoming panels this week, but like Frederick said, you can definitely go to qplusedu.org and then you will see everything that is coming up. And also, we'd love to hear your feedback. So here is the link to our feedback form. Yeah, please just feel free to let us know how you felt about this session. If there are questions that you have that you weren't able to answer during this, you can ask those there, and we will do our best to get back to you on those. But yeah, I think that's all I have.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and yeah, we really appreciate y'all being here and hope you have a wonderful evening. Take care.
Super honored to be here. Thank you.
Bye.